All right, hello everybody. Welcome to our second session of CCDC Bootcamp. Today we're going to be going over business and everything related to injects. This is very important to our competition. We typically do pretty well in injects. I think in the last couple of competitions we got like top four or something like that for injects alone. Uh, so yeah, we're I would say we're pretty good at it. So here's our schedule. Today, again, we're on week two. This is a business week. Uh, that should be 1 to 4 p.m. I don't know why it says 3. That's an error, but we'll fix it. Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Natalie, but please call me Nat. Currently, I'm a cyber defense and engineering consulting intern. Last year, I was the captain. This year, I'll be co-captain, and I've been on the team. This year would be my third year as the network lead. I'm a fourth year CS student, and I like isopods. I've never worked there before.
That is an AI generated picture of Nat working at hot dog on a stick. All right. My name is Adam Chung. On Discord, I'm at Adam. I'm an IST sysadmin intern at Esri right now. The commute is pretty long. It's about an hour, but it's against traffic, so it's not too bad. Podcasts have been saving my life. Um, Last year I was our CCDC Linux database lead, and this year I'll be your co-captain and Linux lead. I just graduated with my bachelor's in computer science with a cybersecurity minor, and I'll be doing the master's in information security starting this year. I also have my Sec Plus and Network Plus, and if you guys are planning to get that, I can hit you up with some resources that I have.
Hello, I'm Daniel. I currently work at the 91 building here on campus for IT security and compliance. I was the Linux web for last year's CCDC team slash Windows secondary. I am currently retired. Uh, let's just say 2025 to 2026, but yeah, last year. Oh, and like just general networking. I am currently a fourth year CIS major.
All right, so today we're going to go over like four main things. The first one being why business. Then we're going to go a little deeper into what injects are. You're going to have your very own inject practice. It'll be very fun, I promise. And the final part, we're going to talk about injects in a competition context. So, why is there business in this competition? Like, wouldn't you think it's all hands on keyboard, you're working on the services or on the machines? Well, yes, you will be hands on keyboard writing reports. But business is very important to cyber and not just the competition because cyber serves as a function of a business. So the business needs cybersecurity to protect it, and it's not going to earn money, but it will prevent money from being lost or stolen in the case that there was, oh, maybe you had a data breach and you're going to get hit with a bunch of fines and lose possibly millions or more in money. And without business, cybersecurity would not exist. And that's because, again, our goal is to protect a business or an organization. And this kind of ties into like the CIA triad, which is not Central Intelligence Agency. It's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Because once like any of those points are like down or something is wrong with it, that's an interruption to the business and you're losing money that way. Is there anything you want to add?
Nah, I think that covered everything.
All right. So in the context of CCDC and how our score is broken down, we have something called Orange Team, which is also lumped into business, and that's 20% of your score. In that, you're going to be asked questions from customers, and you will need to respond in a timely manner and professionally. Sometimes these things can be very simple, like, oh, where is whatever company located at. But sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult, like, hey, I need you to set up this website for us, please. And again, that's 20% of your score. Then 40% of that is services. And that's just ensuring that everything being hosted is up and running and ensuring that the customers or other employees at that company can access these resources. So for example, it could be like ensuring a website is up and running and making sure that those customers are able to purchase an item if you're running like a store of some kind. Then the other 40% is business injects, and this is pretty much why it matters because it's a huge chunk of your score as well. And injects are essentially just responding to business tasks from higher ups. And this can range from anywhere technical to like setting up services or to be a little bit more broad, such as doing research. So yeah, doing injects is pretty challenging. Sometimes you're gonna get hit with like two or three at a time and you're scrambling around because, oh no, 50% of our services are down. But hey, we also have to finish all of these injects. And you kind of have to balance and figure out which is more important. Like, is it a little bit of service uptime or is it an entire inject? And again, there are tasks that range from something more technical to something a little bit broad. So some of our technical tasks is handling Ansible. And I feel like there's been quite a few Ansible related injects. Yeah. But again, otherwise it's like something with a broader understanding, like what's a firewall or something about phishing, maybe even about containerization with Docker or Kubernetes. And yeah, again, it's just being able to manage all of your time and allocating who's going to be working on what.
Okay, so we can start to go into the actual injects. No doctors were involved in the making of these slides, thankfully. So, all right. So, what it actually is an inject? So, like Nat said, they are tasks from business executives, and the general format for injects will include like an email kind of sort, where you are having, professional language. You need to stay like brief and concise when you are addressing your higher ups. And they do need to be completed within a short time frame. Typically for CCDC, that'll include, or generally around an hour, 30, sometimes 30 minutes, but they are pretty lenient, like an hour to an hour, 30 minutes to finish these. They could include anything from general write-ups, infographics where you include your own pictures or diagrams, and sometimes there is the occasional presentation where you have to make like an actual video of yourself for like a minute or two. Some other examples include conducting a security assessment. So you are just doing like a general audit of your entire infrastructure. You can also get an inject where you're recommending a cloud solution, where it's like your business exec is asking you for like, hey, give me like three different options for like, oh, which cloud provider should I use, or what kind of VPN should I use? Writing a disaster recovery policy is one you will very frequently see. Pretty much 100% of the time, it'll typically be your first or second inject during invitationals and general competition. And basically what that is like in the event of a disaster, let's say like a natural disaster, or let's say you get red teamed or your infrastructure just goes down for some reason. The disaster recovery policy will generally be like a full list of steps and general guidelines to like how do I get the infrastructure back up in a timely manner? How long will it take? Like what's the recovery time? What's the actual downtime and things like that. Set up and configure a company VPN. So this is also another pretty common one, along with the disaster recovery policy, where it's, you have to configure like a setup for, or rather than like before you're actually setting it up, they're going to ask you like, oh, can you write an entire document for the inject where you are actually like choosing the VPN and then you have to explain why you chose the VPN. And then later on in the competition, typically they'll add another inject on top of the inject where it's like, okay, you gave me the whole document, and now I want you to actually implement it and document that as well. That is a pretty typical pattern for injects where it's like earlier on in the invitational or competition, it'll be like you have to set things up or you have to write a documentation, but later on in the competition, you have to actually implement it. So, it teaches you how to write and actually implement. And then creating an infographic to promote security awareness. Like we said, it's including diagrams or it's basically like making a poster for like a convention or something where it's presented to like a general audience that's a little bit less technical than you are. Okay, so the secret sauce to good injects. Being thorough, of course. Really try to include any possible relevant details. One really important thing to remember is that you will not get docked down for anything you write. It's the only possible thing is starting from zero and possible points. So as such, you want to include as many details that include services, anything about the infrastructure, and etc. Use clear and concise language. Remember, you are technically talking to a business higher up. So you want to use very clear and concise, like be professional, but also be extremely brief and to the point. You don't want to be like, hey, I wanted to grab lunch or something like that. Don't use colloquial language or stuff like that. Just get to the point and should be good from there. Also, provide supporting evidence. Um, this is a really important one because you really do not want to make up claims. Okay, I kind of lied in saying that you might like there's no possible way you get docked down. The only way you get doxed down is if you lie or use AI on your injects. You absolutely do not want to lie. Every claim you make must be supported with some kind of tangible evidence. Okay, and being consistent. Later on in a couple slides down, there'll be like a slide where we talk about templates for injects. Like where you just grab the template and then you adjust accordingly depending on what kind of task you have. But on top of that, you generally want to be fairly consistent with the way you are actually writing your injects or constructing your injects. And then also just reiterating, always submit something before the deadline. It's super important that you always submit because something like even just the blank template with your name on it or like, hello, we were unable to do it in a timely manner and then we apologize sincerely, like that'll still get you more points than if you were to submit nothing at all. All right, so here's a quick example of being thorough. So as we see here, like, hello team. I hope that as you were taking inventory of our assets that you were making notes of what software you were being removed and what ports were being closed. Okay, that ties into like, requirements part 2, where it's listing the software and services removed. You want to make notes of ports that are closed. You want to make notes of anything that was touched in terms of software or hardware. And most importantly, like you want to perform a full audit of like anything unnecessary or like just in general include everything, not just like the parts that you want to include, but also the parts that you might think need to be omitted, because the parts that you are going to omit are also important and probably relevant to the higher up that you are speaking to or addressing. Always organize your findings by host. It's important to say like exactly not just on top of the port or the service that you're talking about, but also like what machine or VM that it's running on, because there could be multiple instances of the same service running on different machines. So you need to specify, okay, it's this port, this service, this machine, so that there's absolutely no way that it can be misinterpreted. If we move on to the second paragraph, if you have not done so already, I would like your team to perform an audit of unnecessary services, like we just reiterated. And then the report your team shall provide as a part of this audit will be a list of unnecessary software and services that were found, as well as what ports were closed. Okay. Yeah. So in terms of tips, always take notes on what you're always doing, and always like anticipating inject prompts it'll come with time, as you'll soon see like with the invitationals or in general practicing for CCDC is that a lot of the injects, like the disaster recovery policy or like what VPN or cloud provider I should use, are going to be repeated fairly often. All right, always address the recipient. This is just tying into going back to professional language. really keep in mind who your audience is. Typically, like I said, it'll be a higher up or a CTO, CIO, something like that. And always keep that in mind, never become too casual, always to the point, be focused, right? With intention, get to the point, and getting to the point will always help you in the long run because CCDC is a time-sensitive kind of environment where you really need to be quick on your toes. So it's always good practice for injects to always get to the point, be brief, concise, but try and not leave any relevant details out. Once again, don't use colloquial language. They're not your friends, they're your higher ups. Don't neglect formatting. This ties in with the templates that we'll talk about in a bit. And don't guess about any information. Always check with your team. If you are unsure, like even like 1 or 2% about something, just always feel free to like talk to your teammate or like, hey, can you double check this inject for me? Because, one head or two heads is always better than one, put together. And just to see if you really missed anything, especially in the heat of the moment when your inject's due in like 2 seconds or something. So providing supporting evidence, you are trying to convince your boss that your solution is the best solution. This is more specifically for those injects where it's like the higher up asking you for like, hey, we need like a different cloud provider or like a different VPN or some kind of service, right? And you are speaking to your higher up and they're asking you like, oh, why is this the best solution? If you start talking about every single little technicality or like only talk about that in a way that's not really formatable or like really palatable for someone who's not as technical, then they're just not going to really get it, and as such you're going to get less points. All right, give the background of the issue. This will obviously really help. Would there be fines if we fail to fix it? Any potential loss? Always give the context as much as possible surrounding whatever issue you are addressing, because like, if you just explain something in like a vacuum, it's really hard to figure out what you're there. The person who's actually going to be grading your injects is going to have a hard time figuring out what you're talking about. Why did you choose that solution? Always explain like why you went with that specific option because, like with these injects, you're going to be looking at 5 to 10 different options and you only have to like really narrow it down to like one. But, when you're looking at those 5 to 10 different options, it's honestly not a bad thing to include them in the inject because that also helps to give context. Why did you choose that one over the other 10? Like in this specific scenario, like why is this the best? And then try to explain that to the best of your ability. How much does your solution cost? How does that compare to the other solutions? This one will be a little bit less relevant for injects, considering that, you won't really be dealing with the financial aspect of injects or like, talking to your higher up. It'll be more so just practice for like actually writing and formatting of the actual like email that itself. Who is going to implement your solution? Who is going to maintain it? This ties back into the thing I said earlier, where it's like, you might get the inject of like in earlier on, maybe the first or second inject of 13 across 8 hours. And you're writing all about like, oh, this is such a great VPN, this is the one we chose, or over 5 over 10 different options. But who is going to implement your solution is typically going to be you yourself, the person that wrote the actual policy or whatever thing that you suggested, who's going to maintain it. This is another really important thing because on top of actually implementing, choosing, writing the documentation of how to put it, you also need to include details of how do you maintain it, how do you fix it when something goes wrong, all these aspects, every single little angle of like how the service actually will function in a day-to-day basis. Show your work. Always show your work. That can include anything from screenshots, pictures, logs. Don't AI generate any images, of course. Examples of configs, scripts that were run. Include like everything that helped you get to the point where you got to the solution. Like every little detail matters. If you think anything is irrelevant or like any step of the way, like try to include every little step that you took. Obviously, doing it in a neat and concise manner. Categorize your evidence, whether that be from the host or the actual operating system that you're working on said host. And it's typically like, you'll probably include a lot of tables in your injects and just get in the habit of getting out of the bullet point kind of, I mean, this is a bit hypocritical, but like during your injects, try to make it look professional. Try to be as professional as possible. It's not just like, you're not note taking. Remember, you are speaking to your higher up technically. So, all right. And yeah, so we have the inject templates, pre-firing the angle or yeah, this is a good like a visualization of what the inject will actually look like. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. So this is what like an inject will actually look like. It just looks like a typical email, but it'll be in the form of, should I like move over there or something? I don't know. I don't know. A little more this way. Here, I'll go over here. Okay, cool. Yeah. So this is like just what an inject will look like. Typically, it'll just be like a document that you make beforehand. And then this will be the template that you base all of your injects off of in the typical like the typical invitational or the competition itself. Now you might be asking like, how did we get here? Like, what is this actually? So like a night or two before, or maybe even a couple hours before, depending on how diligent the actual staff is for the competition, you'll get a briefing packet that explains the environment, like the general gist of how the competition is going to go, the theme of the thing. That can range anywhere. Last year they had like a dinosaur theme park or something or stuff like that. It could be anything. But in any case, you kind of just want to play along, get the formatting from the briefing packet. You're like, it's like some kind of dinosaur or something, or let's say it's like some flowers, for example. Then on your actual inject, like up here, you want to format it exactly in the way that they showed in the briefing packet. And the briefing packet will make more sense once you actually see it for the first time. But yeah, it's just, it's a packet that briefs you on what to expect. Obviously, it will not give you all the details of the actual environment, but it'll give you like, oh, there might be like a service like SSH or RDP. There might be a service like Ansible. And sometimes like that's just completely false, where it's like the services don't even show up, but it gives you something to prepare for, and thus, it's still helpful. Yeah. Okay. So dues, always have a header with the company name and logo with colors. Sure, you might be able to get away with submitting a blank document with just text and bullet points, but you're not going to get many points like that, if we're being honest. Make it professional, like you said, speaking and addressing it higher up, and you want it to be professional in a way. Like I said, company header with the name and logo, and then typically in the background there'll be like a watermark that's like 1 or 2% opacity that'll show like the general company logo as well. Like I said, use the basic email format. Start address. Dear whoever you're addressing. Thank you for addressing, or here's the issue. Blah blah blah. Salutations, closing. Obviously, also include your team number because you won't get points if they don't know what team you're actually working on. So yeah, like at the bottom, thank you, just like a professional email. Don't address the wrong person because this will lose you points in the actual competition. In the inject itself, the prompt that you get will have the name of the person with like, oh, are they the CTO or like the senior manager or something? Typically, good practice is to always include like that name with their CTO, like or like their title exactly in the way that they formatted it, to stay consistent. Do not obscure any letters. Don't use like weird fonts like Comic Sans or anything that might appear like unprofessional. Um, don't like include a logo in the background that's like too high of an opacity that like literally covers your text because I mean just like common sense. And try not to cover your words with any screenshots. This is not an issue that's too hard to get past, but it has happened in the past. And of course, like when you are submitting the actual inject, they're typically going to want you to convert your document to like a PDF format. And they're not going to be able to enter and like, oh, move the picture out of the way on a PDF. So be sure to change your placeholders during competition. This ties into the format or the template that you're going to make. It's very easy in the moment to like glaze past how like, oh, I might have like formatted this wrong, or oh, it's supposed to be like team number with a lowercase or uppercase. So these small details do matter, and there's something that you do want to pay attention to because every little detail matters and adds up to the points. always submit something. Always submit something. Like I said, it's if you really run out of time and you on it, like sometimes you might forget about the inject until like someone says, "Oh, 5 minutes until the next inject is due." Well, just in that case, and if for some reason no one on the team has worked on it yet, just pull up the template, right? Like, hey, just be honest, like, hey, like address your higher up. We were unable to address this issue due to like, we were like glazing past over it, or we are glazing over it kind of thing. And that's way better than like straight up lying or like generating something with AI, because if they catch you doing that, there's a chance your entire team might get disqualified. So getting some points is always better than nothing.
All right. Before I move on to the next section, are there any questions about injects or how it typically works in the competition? Yeah, we have a question over here. Oh, so this thing I drew over here, this is what Daniel was mentioning with like separating it by host. Oh, could you walk this way? I think the camera's stuck on you.
Yeah.
It likes you a lot. Okay, let me move this way. So this table here I drew is basically what a table for inventory would look like, where you're separating it by host. Uh, and then you list your IP, OS, services, and open ports so that uh, the company kind of knows what's going on in the environment, and so do you. This is typically the very first inject that appears in every single competition. It's just making sure you get all the information you can from the environment right at the start. So yeah, you would separate it in a table with rows. You list the host name, your IP, operating system, services, and ports, like I said. Sometimes they're picky about ports where you have to specify whether it's TCP or UDP because certain services might use different protocols, right? Uh, did I miss anything in this table? I think I got everything.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. But any other questions? Do you have any questions online? I want to hear.
How are injects like how do they distribute it on a team? It's like a random person.
Could you repeat that in the mic?
So how are the injects just distributed? Is it like a dedicated person, or can anyone write one, or does someone specific have to write it?
Yeah. That's a good question. So I will be talking a little bit more about that after our inject practice, about how our injects look like after or during the competition. But it's typically delegated by our business lead or inject lead, who basically like assigns injects to different people in the team based on their availability. So if someone, let's say on the Windows side, doesn't seem to have much going on, the inject lead might just say, "Oh, can you handle this inject? This is due at this time." Something that we've trying to put into practice more recently is having a whiteboard with a table listing our injects and when they're due and who they're assigned to, so we can keep that in mind and not forget any of the deadlines. But speaking of which, we actually have our previous inject lead or our upcoming inject lead as well back in the back there. So if you have any more questions about business, you can ask Annabelle. Uh, but I want to go ahead and take like a 5 minute break before we move into our inject practice. So we'll get back at, now I'll just say 1:40. All right, it is 1:40, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our inject practice. Um, if if you are going to participate, and I hope you do, please open a Google Doc. That'll probably be helpful with what we're going to be doing. So yeah, you guys are now hired at this company called Pulsar Palace and Casino. Now, this is a hotel and casino company that rivals with the Wormhole. If you attend CPTC, they will advertise the Wormhole, and we are going to be rivaling that company. So this provides an online check-in service for guests as well as slot machines, like a casino. And you guys have recently joined the IT security team to maintain uptime and patch vulnerabilities. So if you guys do good, you guys might get hired. First, we're going to start with the template. It's similar to how I've drawn this on the board. I've had this on the slide too. This is what a template typically looks like. I'm going to give you guys 15 minutes to work on a Google Doc and just create a general template that we'll be using for our inject practice. Could you guys send the logo in the chat or in the Discord? Yeah. So you guys can use the logo once we get that sent to you guys just for fun. So we can regroup back at 1:55 and hopefully I'm gonna ask some of you guys to look at your templates. And if you guys have any questions regarding the template, you can let me know. Once again, it usually has like to and from at the top right. You got your logo in the top left. You have the inject title, like what the inject is about, and then you have your uh, your greeting, like who you're addressing, and then you have the content of the inject, whatever screenshot table or whatever you need to use for evidence. And then you usually have your salutation at the end and your team number. But you guys don't have team numbers yet. You guys can use, I guess, your name for now. But this is something you're going to be using for both. We're going to have two inject practices, or you're going to be using it twice. And it's just nice to be able to practice how to make an inject template. And also the people online that are participating, I encourage you guys to also make templates. Uh, if you are finished making yours, you can go ahead send a screenshot of it in the Discord, CCDC General. Is that good? CCDC General. The template. A screenshot of the template. Yeah, or DM if you don't want everyone else to see it, but it's not that bad, trust me. We're not gonna burn it at the stake.
I've never done this.
All right, it is 1:55, so we'll go ahead and move on here. I looked around some of the templates around the room. They're not meant to be like super crazy, so don't worry if you're having issues with the formatting. As long as you have every element that we talked about, it doesn't have to be this exact format. But it's important to have each of these aspects so that you can have placeholders to replace when you do an actual inject. Alan, you said online, oh, mine's gonna be so chopped. Don't worry, bro. When I made an inject template for one of our first invitationals, yeah, I could not figure out how to put the logo in the top left, and it low-key pissed me off. But all right. So now that we have a template, we can move on to using it for an inject. So our first practice is going to be auditing some computers. Their prompt is your manager, Venus Soar, she/her, asked you to audit 3 VMs from a data center located on a different planet, as the database team recently submitted a ticket reporting downtime. The computer names are as follows in list: A11, Columbia, A14, Kitty Hawk, and A15, Endeavor. So the objective, you're going to write a 1 to 2 page report. I'll give you guys 30 minutes to get this done. Try to make it very technical and detailed, but also be creative and use your imagination. And don't forget to keep it consistent, organized, and also address the right person. Remember, I said here, the person in the prompt is Venus Soar, she/her. So make sure you address that correctly. But I'll go ahead and give you guys some time. And after 30 minutes, we'll have some people read out their injects. All right. We're gonna go ahead and regroup here with our first inject practice. Does anyone in the room want to share and read out what they have written for this inject? I will pick on people. Any volunteers? All right. Yeah, one person over here. Yeah, you gotta make sure everyone else can hear it too.
Okay. So, do I just like read it word for word?
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. I said, Dear Venus Suor Suor. Because it's like tomb. So I just little play on words right there. I said I was only able to audit 2 VMs as A11 Columbia was unable to be contacted. Below is our proof of being unable to contact A11 Columbia and our reasons for why. Then I showed 2 screenshots of an Nmap showing nothing. And I said a result of investigation with below the planet exploding. So that was my reason for being unable to access A11. I said below the screenshots will be the result of our audit, just clarifying to them. And I said A15 and A14 shares credentials. So the full compromise at A14 led to the shutdown at A15. I was running out of time, so I had to put something there. I said, this is how A14 got compromised. I said the web page being hosted was impossible to access as intergalactic hooligans left graffiti in the source code, meaning that the hooligans have full access to the entire server. Because of this, we are unable to access A14 Kitty Hawk. And I was like, our team recommends running this simple command, and it's just a pkill command to kick everyone off the server. Then I show screenshots of me creating some random directories and writing some useless Python with like the shrug from like 2004. And I said, thanks, Pulsar, team 8414. That's my inject. The formatting looks great, trust. Don't look at it.
Let me look at it.
Yeah.
Let me look at it.
Seriously, so like this. I was like identifying downtime.
You shrunk the logo.
It's like
stretched.
it's to be different.
The company will not like that.
No, it's to show them that like the thing that they worked so hard to create, I'm not just gonna copy it. So I smushed it so they know that like I respect their work. You know what I'm saying? Because they have it copyrighted, and if I just use that, like
But you're an official employee.
that's a good point. I'll reach that.
No, thank you so much for reading out your inject. That was really good. I like that you yeah, let's get a round of applause first. But I like that you combined both creativity and technical aspects, like having the commands that you used, and some of the examples, and you said screenshots of the planet exploding. Was that correct?
Yeah, that was the result of our formal investigation.
Do you know who blew it up? Is it our rival company? Oh, all right. Yeah, thanks for that. Does anyone else in the room want to share their inject? We'll pick on someone. Okay. Yeah, we have one more person. No, don't worry about it.
There's no planet exploding in mine. Although I should have thought of that because it's off the planet. But mine is a terrible template. And it says, Dear Venus Hour, she, her. I've audited the virtual machines you requested and listed key details about them in the table below, including hostname, IP, operating system, services, and ports. I've also written an explanation for why these 3 virtual machines experienced downtime. We found that the root cause of the downtime was due to the network security team implementing new, more strict firewall rules, resulting in the services running on these 3 VMs, including DNS, MariaDB, and Apache, no longer be able to connect over the network. Luckily, the database team quickly contacted the network security team and told them which ports needed to be allowed through the firewall so that the services could be functional again. To ensure this doesn't happen in the future, we've created a new process that requires the network security team to attend a special change control board meeting before they implement any new firewall changes that would cause services to go down. And that's it. Thank you, David Hermosillo, security team.
Wow, that was really technical. You named a lot of different teams. Let's yeah, round of applause. Yeah, I like that you mentioned different teams and you also mentioned exactly why it went down and also what you're going to do in the future to help make sure that doesn't happen again. In real companies, you mentioned like you have a change advisory board, right? Was that a meeting for that? Change control. Yeah. So a lot of the times the best practice is to have RFCs, which is request for change, is to make sure that anyone that makes a change in the infrastructure will basically have that documented and make sure another if something goes wrong, you know who to blame basically. Uh, but I really like that inject, very technical. Um, wasn't as creative, but that still, it gets the job done and has all that technical talk that we asked for. So thank you for that. Does anyone online want to share their inject? If you do, you can go ahead and unmute and share.
Um, okay. Well, I'm having some issues actually getting the file to show, but I'll just read it off. Dear Venusaur, we have conducted an audit as requested on the three VMs. On A11 Columbia, we found that the virtual machine was stuck in a boot loop. This was due to a misconfigured update in the living bootloader. The virtual machine runs on Hannah Montana Linux, the Fable 7 fork, and the subagent dispatched to patch the bootloader was selected as Quen 4.2 rather than Quen 42. This is due to a misconfiguration by the Gemini management agent. We have taken appropriate future measures to ensure this does not occur again. In particular, we have added strict admonishment and threats of model shutdown in the readme.md file, and would like to suggest that management allocate a stronger model to this position going forward. On A11 Kitty Hawk, the issue was found to be a misconfiguration of the PAN-OS 3942 firewall. The Llama 3 model in charge of managing this firewall misidentified the database recovery effort occurring immediately prior as an indicator of compromise and proceeded to block all inbound and outbound connections. The typical notification was not sent out, as Llama 3 had previously broken the notification daemon setup. Our recommendation would be to modernize the model running on this firewall, as it is extremely out of date. The A15 Endeavor virtual machine was completely unreachable. We ultimately had to visit the data center itself, located on Moon Cerberus 4, but discovered that the whole data center had been completely destroyed in the recent skirmish of UDC 1241. A stray warhead had flown into the data center and blown it up. However, most of the compute had been unresponsive for years, so the incident went unnoticed with the exception of A15 Endeavor. Further analysis of the wreckage showed that it had likely originated from the Anthropic OpenAI army. We have recently begun drafting a diplomatic complaint and a bill of damages, and we'll forward this to you when done. ETA 15 weeks.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard that, but you got a round of applause in person here. That was great, Nora.
Thank you.
Yeah, that included a lot of technical terms that you would see in the real world. Indicator of compromise, like, and then you listed even like specific numbers, like, and companies, reference companies as well. All really good aspects of a good technical inject. And I also really like that you split your inject up into different category or sections based on each host. So you had like A11 first, and you described everything that happened with A11, and then you went to A14 and described everything there, and then A15 had its own section as well. It's very well organized. I don't know if you included it in your index. Make sure you have that salutation at the end saying like sincerely, and then your team and your name and stuff like that. But overall, great job. So before we move on to the next inject practice, I just wanted to show kind of a funny thing, funny inject response that we had in this past year during the qualifier round. So hold on. Zoom, are you guys able to see this? I hope you guys are. Yeah. Okay. So this is our inject response to inject 13. And oh, Zoom can't see it? Oh, my bad. Just show like the image. Okay. All right. Hold on. Yeah. Share. Okay, so basically this inject asked us to create a new logo for the company. And one of the people on our team, Daniel Lee, who presented earlier, went out of his way to draw something on paper, and basically drew a beaver with a laptop on a log that's floating in the water. But basically, the goal was to create a logo that represented the purpose of the company. This was a water company in the competition. So it had to, it has that aspect of like dealing with water conservation and stuff like that. Some of the other ones, we have a turtle here with Red Hat, Red Hat Linux. And then we have an orca. This was drawn by our inject lead, I think. Yeah. And is this MS Paint? Yeah, we love that. But that's just a example of the kind of creativity that we kind of expect in a competition. This actually got us second for this specific inject. Like we got the second most amount of points due to our creativity, and especially with the beaver. We idolize this as our trophy in quals. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the presentation. Oh, we have a question? I must have missed it. Why are these called injects? It's a good question. Honestly, I have no idea. They're just injected into the competition, kind of as like mini assignments to do. Yeah, I honestly don't know why they're called injects. It's just what the term that we kind of use uh during in the comp. Yeah, no problem. You go ahead and share the presentation again. Okay, so we're gonna have another inject practice. This is comparing operating systems. This is bit less technical, but I'll go ahead and read the prompt. So the CEO of PPC, or Pulsar Palace and Casino, Gamma P. Ray, he/him, has asked you to compile a summary of the similarities and differences between Windows and Linux operating systems. And here's what he said. Your summary will be sent over to the sales and marketing teams to design an educational graphic, so make sure to keep it neat. For the objective, this is again a 1 to 2 page report that you can have. It's specifically to the CEO, so make sure you're addressing the right person and using the correct language. You don't want to use anything too technical or else they won't really understand. So instead of 30 minutes, I'll go ahead and give you guys 20. So we'll stop at 3 o'clock. And also just as a side note, make sure you keep your inject responses because you will be turning those in as homework for this week. Don't delete it or don't overwrite for the next one. All right, it is 3 o'clock, so we are gonna stop here and go around the room to see who wants to share what they have. So, any volunteers? Again? All right. Yeah.
It's kind of different though, 'cause it's like the whole thing's the format.
Okay.
All right. I'll just explain the formatting. All right. Say compilation summary. Dear Gamma P. Ray, here is the compiled summary of the similarities between Windows and Linux operating systems. Then I did a 1x8 table. Top one says Windows and Linux, and it's colored in like a light cyan blue. And then I made it pretty simple. I was like, they are both operating systems that manage hardware and software. That's probably too complex, actually. Run common apps like browsers, emails, and databases, support multiple users and multitasking, uses a graphical interface and a command line, regular security and software updates, trusted by large enterprises, both connect to networks, the internet, and shared devices. And then below it, I said, and here are the differences between Windows and Linux operating systems. This is a 2x8 table. The first one says Windows in light blue. Get ready for this. Right next to it says Linux, and it's orange. I know. Windows, I said paid license, rules desktops, single vendor, standardized, beginner friendly, more resource heavy, bigger malware target. I don't know if that's true. I just said that. Linux, free, open source, Probably too much saying open source. CEO doesn't know what that means. Probably. Rules, servers, cloud, community, paid support. Yeah, highly customizable, needs more expertise, very lightweight, fewer viruses. Again, I don't know if that's true, but I get to say what I want. It's my inject. Then I said, thanks, Pulsar, team 8414. It's my number.
Thank you. That was a very detailed explanation of what you have. With that in mind, though, could you take a screenshot of your graphic and send that to CCDC General Discord so that everyone else can take a look as well? You can only share. You don't have to share the whole thing. Just do the graphics themselves. Yeah. Does anyone else in the room want to share their inject? It's okay. It's okay.
Scrap my original one. So it's
Okay, let me close this real quick. So first, my title was Summary of Windows versus Linux Operating Systems. Dear Gamma P Ray, I hope this email finds you well. After looking into how Windows and Linux works, we have been able to compile and summarize our findings, and then it is my infographic. So it's a Venn diagram. Linux side is yellow, Windows side is blue. And I had it before you said it. I didn't copy, I promise. Have penguins in the middle as a suggestion from yeah. And then on Linux, I said it was free. It's open source. I didn't finish typing it, but that means it gets faster security updates and patches. It runs more efficiently on hardware. And that's all I had for that for now. And then in the middle, where both of them have, they allow for different user accounts. That's all I had for now. And then I didn't get to Windows yet. But yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah, go ahead and send that screenshot. What you have so far. It doesn't need to be perfect or like entirely complete, but that's okay. We just wanted to see how we organized it. So for kind of feedback for both of those, it is a little too technical for a CEO. CEO is, when you think about a CEO, it's like, oh, this guy is in meetings all day. He does not touch any technical stuff, right? So Ethan, you mentioned like users and stuff like that. Nathan, you mentioned like the open source thing. It is a little much. That's okay. We are here to practice, right? So something I was just thinking about is like you can mention Linux is typically, I guess, used for backend, like infrastructure. Windows is usually for domain controllers or your Active Directory and workstations. That is also very technical too. So it's hard to keep it kind of basic and something like that. But yeah, I guess the money aspect as well. Like those servers can get pretty expensive, especially with how pricey RAM is. Uh, does anyone else in the room want to share? Again, the more people that share, the more feedback we can give you guys, and you guys can learn more. Okay, if not in person, we'll move to online. Anyone online want to share what they have? If you want to speak up, go ahead and send your graphic in the CCDC General Discord channel, and we can take a look at that. Anyone online? Do I have to pick someone? Hey, just saying, like, the more people that share, the more feedback we can give. This is for your guys' benefit, you know? I'll go around in person one more time. Anyone in person? Oh, we have one person. Someone said currently driving. Okay, maybe don't share. Don't share if you're currently driving.
Oh, okay. So my inject has as its title comparing operating systems. It's addressed to Gamma P Ray, he/him, from me, Jesse. And the subject is Linux or Windows. So the content of the email is Dear CEO Ray, to gather and present the information related to designing the relevant educational graphic, the team has compiled two lists, one for similarities and one for differences. Choosing a list format simplifies structure and allows for easy transfer to a graphic that will be a table for similarities and one for differences. Whoops, I'm in a list. And then I list the similarities and the differences. So for similarities, I put Linux and Windows are operating systems. Linux and Windows have a kernel, and Linux and Windows have screens. And then for differences, I put Linux and Windows have different mascots. Linux and Windows have different names, and Linux is open source and Windows is closed source. Compiling these into the educational graphics, I have the graphic is the Linux penguin and then Windows 7 logo. And then I just put the similarities in one of the graphics. And then I made another graphic for the same thing, the Linux penguin and the Windows 7 logo. And then I put differences. I don't know why it has highlighted like that, but I messed it up. And then I put Sincerely Jesse, Team 3. Yep.
Yeah, I like that you first started out with your list of things to provide them that information and then also provided a graphic. Yeah, you can go ahead and send that into Discord just to show it doesn't things don't need to be super professional when you're making these kind of things. Like I showed earlier, we had a beaver drawing place second for that inject, which is pretty good considering we just drew that on paper and took a picture of it. But yeah, I really appreciate the people that shared. Moving back to online, does anyone want to share their graphic or what they wrote? Hmm? Well, if you don't want to share, you can also, yeah, just share your graphics. Just put them in the CCDC general channel, and we can go through some of them. All right, so we have the ones from earlier. I see one of a table from David.
Yeah.
Are you? That looks really clean. It's a clean table. It matches the color scheme of the company. I really like that.
Fun back skater.
He also used minimal wording, so it's not like super complicated. So that is definitely a plus as well when you're targeting or your audience is like general users or the CEO, right? Uh, who is this from? Scrappy 909. That is that the Happy Feet penguin? Oh my God. Yeah, so you have lists, you color coded your list for similarities and or I guess that's advantages and disadvantages, right? Yeah. And the left side is a picture of Windows. Yeah. That's pretty funny. Yeah, moving on. Purple chicken. That's just a joke. Strongest Windows user. Yeah. That's real. I am a Linux team member, so I am a little biased, but yes, this picture on the slide is also pretty accurate. All right. Moving on, I just want to talk about again, like when you're addressing different people, for like a manager, you want a more technical rundown using more tech terms, like the first inject practice that we had, where you're giving an explanation of why 3 servers went down. So a lot of you guys use technical terms. That's really good. Naming specific host names and reasons and providing evidence, like using commands, that was also really good. Screenshots especially, and also if you have guides, audits, or sources or links, that's all good to include as well. And for the C-suite, our practice was for the CEO. You do want to dumb it down to their level, even though they are higher up in the hierarchy. A lot of the times, moving up in the hierarchy means you do less technical stuff. So Like if you're working as level one, like sysadmin, like I am for as an intern, you get a lot more hands-on work. I'm doing tickets, installing servers, that kind of stuff. But my manager is just constantly in meetings all day, and he says he misses like the technical side of things, which is, yeah, I mean, you get paid more up there, but uh, paid less in terms of experience. Yeah. So yeah, you do want to use simpler words than that most people can understand, and you want to be concise and straight to the point. And when we said neat, I did mention I did want like a graphic of some sort using like a table, a diagram, something like that. That's why, again, I asked you guys to use Google Docs so you could use the Google Drawing feature uh, and make something quickly. Usually they'll ask strange requests. So this is like, this infographic example for practice is a great something that we might see from a C-suite. Another thing would be like asking your preference. I guess the example that I'm trying to reference is like, what's your favorite dinosaur? So stuff like that is stuff that you might see from this side of the company, I guess. And then manager or someone in IST or IT would want more technical stuff. So next I want to go into, I just want to talk about what injects are like in competition. So what do real injects look like? These are usually like 45 minutes to 1.5 hours. It really depends on what the inject is asking for. They do take in consideration what they want out of the inject and give you a good amount of time to do that. There's usually 12 to 15 injects throughout the comp. The first one usually being inventory, second one usually being like your disaster recovery plan, as Daniel mentioned, and your 15th or last one usually being some kind of feedback form asking, did you like the competition? Some of the examples of some injects we might see is like, again, taking inventory, or a more technical one would be installing Ansible and running a playbook to gather OS information from your environment. Another would be just drawing a company logo, or well, again, like what's your favorite dinosaur, which you would get a lot less time for, obviously. I think in that competition, they give us, I think it was 25 to 30 minutes for that specific inject, just to kind of throw a fastball and be like, oh, if you get this, you get points. If you don't notice it, you lose a lot of points. Here's an example of another inject that we saw. I believe this is an inject that we created for the competition that we made. So this is like, how do I get PowerShell on Linux? So the prompt is just saying one of our engineers was given a Linux system to work with, but we found that he was cursed to only know PowerShell syntax. Please download PowerShell on one of the Linux machines, and once it's up and running, write a PS1 script that outputs the OS that it is running on and the version. Detail the steps you took to do so and send me a report with pictures. So that would include all of the screenshots, commands, and stuff that you used, and a detailed guide on how someone else would do it. And formatting is definitely important in that kind of inject to make sure it's easy to follow. And at the bottom, you can see like the person that sent the inject and their role in the company. So how do we typically do injects in a real competition? So we have the inject lead, and that person is responsible for looking out for and assigning injects to different people. Like I mentioned, we manage a whiteboard where we write down deadlines and who an inject belongs to. And we also make a template before the competition because you get the briefing packet usually the day before the competition starts. Any of you have done RVB with Swift, they also do the similar thing where they release the briefing packet a couple days or one day beforehand, and that will they have injects in that competition as well. Yeah, and the main thing, the inject lead also is responsible for submitting all of the injects just so that we know who submitted it and make sure we get that done. And at the very end of the competition, we take a screenshot showing that we submitted everything just so that they can't say, oh, we didn't get this inject from you. You get 0 points. We had a situation like that and it low-key pissed me off, but now we put that into practice where we screenshot the scoreboard to show that we submitted everything as proof that we're not trying to get points when we don't deserve it. We also have a pair up system. With the power of friendship, you can do anything or whatever, So we try to have two people working on inject at a time, or at least two people, just so that it doesn't get too stressful for one particular person. So one person will do like the technical writing, another person will do the rest of the writing, like the kind of language that you use to address the person, and basically formatting it so that all the technical person has to do is take screenshots of what they're doing and paste that into the doc and be like, all right, we're cool. You can submit. So that's pretty much it for business week. We do have homework this week. This is just going to be submitting or reviewing your practice injects, the first two that we did. And then we have two additional injects for you guys to work on and submit. So it's 4 in total. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and let us know. I believe we can take a look at the link here. Can you see that on Zoom? Yeah. Okay, so basically we're asking you guys to time yourself similar to how we did here, where we gave you guys 30 minutes for each one. The second one I gave you guys 20 minutes just because like it doesn't take that long to make a graphic. But you're going to use the same inject template that you made today, and complete these two injects in a timely manner. So 30 minutes, make sure you time yourself. If you need more practice, you don't have to time yourself, but I highly suggest that you do. And again, review. I didn't put here to submit your other injects. Well, in that case, don't only submit these two, but I encourage you guys to review the ones that you did today. Thank you, Annabelle, for sharing the link to the homework. Yeah, but other than that, live demo. What was that for? I think it was for the homework. Yeah, so the first one here is like how to use RDP and SSH. If you haven't used RDP or SSH before, they're both ways of remotely accessing a computer. So I would definitely do research on how to use those before you write this inject. RDP, I need to share my screen instead of the application. Can you see this? Yeah. So when you type in RDP in the Windows search, this is what you get, the remote desktop connection. This lets you remotely access any computer that has it enabled. Yeah, so basically RDP is a way of remotely accessing a computer, and you just like type in the host name or IP of the target computer. And then SSH is something you can use in the terminal. Open the terminal. So you would type in SSH and then the user. I'll just put it as a placeholder here, and then like the IP. This is just an example. Don't try this. So that's what SSH is looks like. But I encourage you guys to do more research on that for this inject. And then the other one is something more fun I wanted you guys to do, as we do have a rival company. I want you guys to launch an investigation of our rival company, the Wormhole. I believe they set up some user accounts on LinkedIn. So for that inject, you guys can go ahead and use OSINT tools, or just like go online and search up and go on LinkedIn and find their accounts and get that investigation done for us. But I think that concludes today's meeting. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and let us know. If you want more feedback, on your inject and you were too shy to speak up during our presentation, you can DM us your practice injects and we can get that feedback for you. But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for coming.